Welcome back to the Visionary Chronicles. Again, appreciate your time as always. And I feel today is very timely. The subject we're talking about on visionary leadership, but also the application of AI for that leader. So welcome back to the Visionary Chronicles. For those of you who don't know, I'm Bryan Smeltzer. I spent 30 years in executive leadership in brands like Oakley, adidas, TaylorMade, K-Swiss, built and sold my own brand to a VC firm, and now I advise CMOs and brand leaders through LiquidMind on building brands that drive our future. And today we're going to talk about what everybody's talking about is AI. And I'd like to take a little bit different angle on today's episode. And what I'd like to talk about is the conversation about AI in, let's say specifically the C-suite, is really stuck in the wrong frame. But what I want you to understand is, although I say C-suite, this really applies to any executive leader that now is facing this AI revolution. And that's truly what it is this AI revolution. And so it can really get stuck in the wrong framing. So I'd like to talk about today is that, most executives are asking about, will AI replace me? And it's not just executives, it's everybody. So the visionary leader asks a really fundamentally different question. And this is what I want you kind of retrospectively to settle down and to really ask yourself, how do I lead better with more speed, more precision, and more impact than with AI than I ever could without it? So it's really an application of AI you're asking the question. It's not this, what I call fear factor of will AI replace me? Again, a fundamental different question is, how do I lead better with more speed, more precision, and more impact with AI than I ever could without it? So I want you to really kind of take a look at this as I talk about in the episode today. So today I'm going to show you the 5 ways. It's not all of them. I always like to keep these between 3 to 5. So I can keep your attention on these 5 ways the best visionary leaders are rewriting this executive, what I call playbook right now. Not theoretically, but operationally. And I'm going to give you some specific challenges at the end of each one so you can start applying this the moment this episode ends. And that's really what I try to do with the Visionary Chronicles is ask me questions, have me be able to answer those questions, and hopefully have you apply these immediately to your day-to-day. So here's the reality we're living in here today in 2026. AI ownership has moved out of the what we call IT department and into the C-suite. Research from KMPG, it's amazing, shows that CEO ownership of AI strategy has doubled in the past year alone. So that really is, again, this hands-on fear factor of not understanding what AI can necessarily do, not for the brand, company, personnel, or team. So they want a really hands-on approach, and this is what that proved. Nearly 3/4 of CEOs now identify their organization's primary AI decision maker, and half of them believe their role is on the line if AI fails to deliver meaningful ROI. So it's a very timely message today, not just for CEOs and C-suite, but really for all executive leadership and how you apply AI to make not only you, your team, your brand, your product, your service, whatever, more efficient and more effective. That pressure is real. But here is what most of the coverage in this topic gets wrong. It frames AI as a tool problem, as a technology implementation challenge, as something you delegate to your CTO and check on quarterly. The leaders who are winning, I can tell you from having worked with these leaders in what we call our AI whiteboarding now with LiquidMind, is we work with entrepreneurs, small, mid, and Fortune 500 companies. The leaders who are winning with AI, just to let you know from the outside looking in, right now are not treating it as a technology problem. They're treating it as a leadership problem. And they're solving it the same way every great visionary leader has always solved the defining challenge of their era, by really building a framework, applying it consistently, and moving faster than everyone who is still asking whether they should move at all. So let's talk a little bit about this framework and what it looks like. There's 5 concepts I'll go through today, and I'll have these in the show notes as well. So as we move through these, you can see how you can apply these concepts and the reality behind AI and how it makes you more efficient, more effective. These are more out of the box thinking of what executives need to look at today. It isn't prompts, it isn't which AI model to use, not about agentic AI. All of these are super important things to understand, but more importantly, how does it fit within your strategy? And how do you implement it with your team to have them understand it's just not the latest fad, but something that is mandatory? And it is mandatory, by the way, that you implement this AI strategy immediately across your brand, company, service, or product. So the first concept I'll talk about is what I call the strategic interrogator. So what I say is, ask better questions than your AI can answer. Now, it sounds counterintuitive. There really isn't anything, and I get what you're thinking, is that there isn't anything AI can't answer. But the first thing I want to address is the fear that AI will make executives obsolete. And hey, I understand where it comes from. When a system can process 10 years of market data in 30 seconds, write a board presentation in 4 minutes, if not now 2 minutes, and model 50 strategic scenarios before your first coffee. It is really natural to ask this question: what role does the human leader play? And here's the answer. The human leader plays the most important role in the entire system, because AI can process information at a scale no human can match. And that's where most people get stuck. How do I outwit AI? You're not going to. But AI cannot ask the right question. Let me give you some examples. It cannot determine which of those 50 scenarios actually aligns with your brand values. Think about that. You still need a human to go through those scenarios and sift through which ones are actually applicable to your brand and your values and the strategy you have moving forward. Extremely valuable to have these scenarios. But don't get caught up in the fact that you're not going to be able to implement all 50 scenarios. So you really need to prompt and drill down on prompting with Claude or whatever you're using to identify which scenario in particular aligns with your strategy and brand value. Now, that's only something a leader can do. Number 2 is it can't sense the political dynamics in your organization that will determine which strategy your team will actually execute versus the only one they'll quietly undermine. And it cannot make the judgment call that no data set can capture. So these are things you need to understand as a visionary leader, is that these things you need to understand in AI implementation is asking the right questions and interpreting what is given to you on the data as to how it applies not only operationally, but psychologically, and also from a principle of what your value is as a brand and a company. So here's your visionary leader principle. The visionary leader in the AI area is not the one who uses AI the most. It is the one who uses AI most precisely, by knowing exactly what question to ask, what output to trust, and where human judgment must override the machine. I call this strategic interrogation. And it is really rapidly becoming the most differentiated executive skill available. Just so you understand, technical fluency is democratized. Prompt engineering can be taught in an afternoon. But the ability to interrogate an AI system with a strategic precision that separates a useful output from a dangerous one, that comes from experience, judgment, and pattern recognition that no model has yet replicated. And I'll give you a brand example. I love giving brand examples. So it gives you an idea of the practical applications some brands have used with their executives. In this case, Microsoft. When Satya Nadella reoriented Microsoft around an AI-first strategy, the first thing he did was not deploy AI across every product. He asked a different question than his competitors. Not, what can AI do, but what does our customer need to do that AI makes possible for the first time? So it wasn't a deployment relative to what the introspective of Microsoft needed. It was a matter of what the outside world needed to make them more effective and more efficient. That interrogation produced Copilot. Now, I know you're going to say Copilot is behind in the AI game. I get it, but it's in the game. So it's not a feature, but a platform shift. That is strategic interrogation at the CEO level. Another brand example is at Oakley. At Oakley, Jim Gennard had a version of this principle before AI existed. And every product decision started with one question with Jim. What does the athlete need that doesn't exist yet? Not what can we make? Not what is the competition doing? The question came first. The answer followed. The AI-first CEO applies the same discipline, just with exponentially more powerful tools to find that answer. So here's a quick principle for you. The value of AI is proportional to the quality of the question you bring to it. Now, I know most people understand that, but great leaders are defined by the questions they ask, aren't they? This is a Socrates strategy. In Socrates, I profile in my book, The Visionary Leader, that I just released. And Socrates had this Socrative method that he would ask questions that would draw better answers. And it's the same thing with AI. I think Socrates would have loved AI and how to use it. He would have been a master at it. In the AI area, that principle has never been more operationally true. So here's a couple things I want you to take away from this concept is practical application. The first thing is this week. Take your most important strategic decision and write the 3 questions you need answered before you can make it well. Run those questions through your best AI tool and evaluate the output. Then ask, what's the one thing the AI answered that surprised me? And what's the one thing it got wrong that I knew from experience? The gap between AI output and correction is your strategic edge. Map it, protect it, build on it. Number 2 is what I call the speed architect. And what this is, you compress decision cycles without sacrificing judgment. And what I looked at was one of the most underappreciated competitive advantages AI delivers is not intelligence, it's speed. Not that intelligence isn't important, but that's a given. I think one thing that surprised most people when we talk to our executives from the brands that we work with is not just the intelligence itself, but how rapidly it provides answers. And not just answered, but structured in a format that can be immediately applied to your brand, product, service, whatever it may be. The ability to compress time between signal and decision, between market movement and strategic response, between a customer insight and a product adjustment has all been compressed because of AI. You know, in the market that moves at the speed of light sometimes, and what we're operating in right now is where a competitor can launch a product, go viral, and dominate the category in 90 days, the leader who compresses decision cycles wins. No longer can you have focus groups. No longer are you allowed to take 60, 90-day windows to make a decision. Not occasionally, never. You need to be consistent now in a new framework, in a new era that we live in, that the ability for your competitors, if put in a decision tree through AI and decision modeling, can now bring a product to market at the speed of light. That should be frightening to every brand leader out there. So here's, in this concept, let me give you a principle as well. The speed architect does not use AI to make faster decisions. That's a trap. Faster bad decisions are still bad decisions. They just fail sooner. The speed architect uses AI to compress the preparation time for decisions. So the decision itself can be made with full information, clear judgment, genuine conviction, and significantly less time. And what I mean by this is that the framing of your prompts is super critical to you getting to a decision quicker. AI is only as good as your input. So if your input sucks, the output's going to suck. And or the output's too broad for you to practically apply anything. Think about the old model. A strategic decision at a company like, let's say, TaylorMade, where I worked, and in product and marketing, might require 3 weeks of data gathering, 2 rounds of analysis, committee review, board presentation, before an ultimate conclusion was reached. AI does not eliminate those steps, it compresses them. 3 weeks of data gathered becomes 3 minutes. 2 rounds of analysis becomes 1 afternoon. The committee review becomes a sharper conversation because everyone walked in with the same AI-generated briefing instead of 3 different versions of the same data. Think of how powerful that is for a brand. At TaylorMade, our competitive advantage was never just the product. It was the speed of our product cycles relative to the market. We compressed them. We disrupted our own product lines before the market demanded it. And we did it by making decisions faster than our competitors could react to them. The leaders who build that kind of speed culture today are the ones embedding AI at every point in the decision pipeline. Think about that. That's a crazy thing to look at today, but everywhere you look. But you have to ensure you understand what you're putting into the model from a strategic standpoint needs many prompts and drilled down to actually deriving a strategy that works that you can implement. Not to replace the decision maker, but to ensure the decision maker is never waiting for information. Think of all the times that you've been having to wait. This is pre-AI for information from somebody else. Not that that person is eliminated, but I can tell you that they probably will be eliminated if they're not effective at utilizing AI to ensure that the brand's moving forward. Another example is Jeff Bezos. He built Amazon's decision culture around what he called two-door decisions. Reversible decisions that could be made fast and low in organization versus irreversible decisions that require the full weight of senior leadership. He gave and empowered his people to make decisions. And AI is going to fundamentally change to what Jeff Bezos' calculus had done originally on reversible decisions. When you can model the outcome of a reversible decision in real time, the cost of being wrong drops dramatically. It used to be back in the day where you would do test beds, A/B testing. You don't need to do that anymore. AI will do that for you, and the speed of organization accelerates. That's a speed architect operating at scale that we've never had before. So, a quick principle on this concept. Visionary leaders do not ask AI to decide. They ask AI to prepare. The decision is always yours. The time you spend getting it does not have to be. Getting to that ultimate decision doesn't have to be slow. So here's your practical application, a few questions that I would like you to take a look at over the next couple weeks on this concept. Identify your 3 most time-consuming recurring decisions that you have. Map where the time goes. And I'm saying pen it out, data gathering, analysis, alignment, or approval, whatever it is. Build one AI workflow this quarter that compresses the preparation phase by 50%. Measure the time you saved and redeploy it into the judgment phase, the part only you can do. So these are all things on practical applications you need to understand what the benefit is, the cause and effect is, and what the ultimate result is. Concept 3 is what I call the culture guardian. Using AI to scale values, not erode them. And here's the leadership tension. It doesn't really get enough airtime in this AI conversation that we have. And the more AI scales your organization capabilities, the harder it becomes to maintain the cultural, what we would say, cohesion that made these capabilities valuable in the first place. So let me be real direct in what I mean by this is that when AI is generating your communications, drafting your strategies, and synthesizing your customer feedback, the risk is not that the output is wrong. The risk is that the output is right but empty. Technically accurate, but culturally hollow, we call it. On message, but off brand in ways your customers feel before they can articulate. So here's a principle we want to take away from this one is the cultural guardian understands that AI amplifies whatever you feed it. If you feed it your brand values, your leadership voice, your customer truth, positioning, it amplifies it. If you feed it generic inputs, it produces generic outputs. And generic is the death of a visionary brand. That's what you call a commodity company. I talk about that many times. Just because you call yourself a brand doesn't mean you're a brand. So this is truly generic outputs from generic inputs. The visionary leader's job in this AI area we live in is so important to be a cultural, I call this source code of the organization. To be so clear about what the brand stands for, how the organization communicates, and what the values actually mean in practice, that when AI is trained on that source code, it produces outputs that feel like you, not like every other AI generated company. And let me give you an example again of a brand on this concept, Patagonia. Patagonia's brand voice is one of the most distinctive I have ever seen in business. Direct, principled, occasionally combative in defense of its values. And it works for them. And obviously, they've been extremely successful. That voice, by the way, was built over decades through thousands of small human decisions. As Patagonia scales its content and communications, the leaders there really face the same AI adoption challenge every company faces. But they have an asset most companies do not. A cultural source code so strong it can train and constrain AI outputs in ways that preserve what makes the brand irreplaceable. That is what I call this culture guardian at work. Another brand example is Apple under Steve Jobs, and to a significant degree under Tim Cook, not nearly as much as under Steve. They've maintained a product voice and visual language so consistent that customers can identify an Apple product before they see the logo. The consistency, by the way, is not accidental. It's a product of leadership that treated brand culture as a non-negotiable constraint on every decision they make, including today, every AI-assisted design and communication decision. The culture is the guardrail. The AI operates inside of those guardrails. Understand that. Have it understand who you are, what you do, and what you've built and you need to maintain. It can be built into a cultural partner, but only through a leader that understands who you are. So here's another quick principle I want you to understand as well. AI scales what you give it. Give it your best, your clearest values, your strongest voice, your most precise purpose, and it will scale that. Give it shortcuts, and it will scale those instead. So, on concept 3, let me give you some practical applications for this next few weeks as well. Is write a one-page brand voice document that captures how your organization communicates. Not your mission statement, your actual voice. The words you use, the tone, the things you never say. Use this as a foundation for every AI prompt in your organization. Audit 3 pieces of AI-generated content from your organization this week. Ask honestly, does this sound like us or does it sound like everybody else? If the answer is everybody else, the problem is not the AI, it's the input. Start there with your team and your organization and your brand. Concept number 4 is the talent reimaginer. Building the organization that AI makes possible. One of the most important and least discussed dimensions of AI leadership is what it does to the structure of your organization, your team. Not layoffs, by the way, not a headcount reduction. I'm talking about the cost-cutting application of AI. That conversation is being had at every board level, and it's largely just a finance conversation, not a leadership one. I'm talking about something more fundamental. The roles that AI makes newly possible, ones that weren't there before, didn't exist 3 years ago, and that represent genuine competitive advantages for the organizations that build them first. So here's another principle for you to take away. The talent reimaginer asks a different question than the cost cutter. So everybody's been in the boardroom, everybody's been in team meetings trying to whiteboard the impact of AI. So the question is not, where can AI replace a human? I know that's counterintuitive, but rather, what new human role does AI make possible that creates value we could not create before? So let me give you a concrete example from the kind of work we do at Liquid Mind. Before AI, a brand strategy engagement had a research phase, an analysis phase, a synthesis phase, and a recommendation phase. Basically, a lot of phases. And all of us have been through that. Each phase was largely sequential and very labor intensive. With AI, the research and analysis phase is compressed dramatically, and we've been utilizing those with Liquid Mind for the last year, and we've got it dialed in. What that creates is not a smaller team, it creates a team that can spend dramatically more of its time in the synthesis and recommendations phase, the human judgment phases, the creative phases, the phases that actually move clients. The output gets better. The value goes up. The team does more meaningful work. That is the talent reimaginer operating in an AI environment. And I'll give you another brand example on this concept, Adidas. At Adidas, the intersection of data, design, and athlete insight has always been where the best product decisions were made. The leaders building AI-augmented product teams at companies like Adidas today are not replacing designers or strategists. They're creating new roles. AI, human-centric, creative directors who can brief a generative AI system with the precision of a seasoned creative director, and then edit, redirect, and elevate the output with human cultural judgment. I know that's a lot of words, but they're creating these new roles that were never available before. The role didn't exist 5 years ago. It's one of the most valuable roles in the organization today. So let me give you a quick principle on this concept. The visionary leaders are not asking which jobs AI will eliminate. They're asking which roles AI will make essential and building those roles before their competitors realize they exist, roles that never existed before. Compression of roles that are providing value beyond human judgment. So here's your practical application on concept 4 is look at your 3 highest leverage functions: strategy, product, and customer. For each one, identify the phase of work where human judgment is most irreplaceable. Then ask, what would it take to have every person in that function spending 80% of their time in that phase instead of 30? That is your AI talent strategy. Build the roles that get you there. Concept number 5, the last is the ethical architecture, leading with AI in a world that is watching. So I want to close with the concept that I think will define executive reputations over the next 10 years more than any other. And it's how leaders use AI ethically. It's a real challenge, and I think it's something we need to address now. Not the legal compliance version of ethical AI, though it really does matter in our world. The deeper version is what I'm talking about. The decisions leaders make about how AI is used when no regulator is watching and no policy requires a specific choice. In an era that we live in today of radical transparency, and we know quick decisions and people jumping to conclusions, your customers know more about how you operate than any customer base in history. It's your community. They engage with you. They buy your product, your service, your brand for a reason, because they trust you. That's part of that lifetime customer value I always talk about that builds brand equity. Your employees can share the internal memo before it reaches the board. Your AI outputs can be reverse engineered to reveal the values or lack of values baked into your system. In this environment, the question is not whether your AI use will be visible. The question is whether what becomes visible will build trust or destroy it. So here's the visionary leader principle. The ethical architect, I call it, treats AI rather as AI governance, not a compliance function, but as a brand building function. Every decision about how AI is used in an organization is a values statement. What data you train it on, what outputs you approve without human review, what decisions you allow to make autonomously versus which ones require a human in the loop, whether you disclose AI used to your customers and how. The leaders who build the most durable AI-first organizations will not be the ones who move the fastest. They will be the ones who move the fastest while building the most trust. Trust compounds on itself. It's the only asset that AI cannot generate on its own. So a quick principle here is AI amplifies everything, as we know, including ethical gaps. The visionary leader is truly one who builds the ethical architecture before the capability outpaces the culture. You cannot retrofit trust into a system that was built without it. So, in the final concept, here's some final practical applications I would like you to look at. I want you to write down the 3 AI use cases in your organization where a mistake would most damage customer trust. For each one, identify this. Is there a human in the loop before this output reaches your customer? If the answer is no, that is your governance priority for this quarter, if not sooner. Then ask if our customers could see exactly how we use AI. Would it make them more loyal or less? The answer to that question is your AI ethics strategy. So hopefully these 5 concepts have kind of built some opportunity for you to identify how AI is going to make your leadership, your team, you personally more effective, more efficient, and more ethically driven in how you utilize AI. But also what you need to input into AI to get the output that you want. So here are some final thoughts for today. Closing challenge I'm going to give to you. Here's what I want you to take away from today's episode. The AI first CEO is not a title, it's a posture. It is a decision to lead the organization relationship with AI with the same intention, conviction, and strategic clarity that every visionary leader has brought to the defining challenge of their era. Phil Knight did not wait for the athletic footwear market to tell him what Nike should be. Steve Jobs did not wait for consumers to ask for a touchscreen phone. Elon Musk did not wait for the auto industry to decide that electric vehicles were viable. They led from the future, and you should too. Understand, it's not what you ask your customers they need. And I go back to the quote from Henry Ford that said, if I would have asked my customers what they need, they would have told me a faster horse. That's bullshit. That does not allow you to lead from the future. They built the reality they could see before anyone else could. That's exactly what the AI first CEO does. You do not wait for the industry to adopt AI. You do not wait for a competitor to force your hand. You do not wait for the regulation to tell you where the lines are. You build the framework, you apply it, you move. So here's your challenge for the week, and I want you to be specific, not general. Pick one of the 5 concepts from today, just one to start. Write down the one decision in your organization that this concept demands you make that you have been deferring. Then make it this week, not next quarter, not after the next board meeting, this week. This is how visionary leaders build the future, by the way. One decision at a time before the market makes it for them. So transform, reinvent, revolutionize. This is not a tagline. This is the mandate of every AI first CEO who is serious, or any executive leader, about what comes next. So if this episode resonated with you, again, I would encourage you to pick up a copy of The Visionary Leader. These profiles that I talk about, these leaders that I talk about, are all profiled in The Visionary Leader, the success principles of the world's greatest visionaries, a best-selling book on Amazon. And it's available now on Amazon wherever books are sold. This book draws directly from the frameworks we discuss in the Visionary Chronicles, and it's really built as your blueprint for building the kind of leadership that generates generational impact. And I put the link in the show notes as well. And if you're a CMO, founder, brand leader, you'd like to apply some of these frameworks I'm talking about directly to your business, I work with a select number of clients on a private advisory basis through Liquid Mind. And if that's you, visit liquidmindadvisory.com and click the link or you can just click the link in the show notes. And another quick ask I have before I let you go is, if this episode gave you one idea you could use this week, would you mind taking 30 seconds to leave a review on Apple or any of the places where this is broadcast? It tells the algorithm that shows we're finding, it helps other leaders discover the content. Just search the Visionary Chronicles, scroll to ratings and reviews, and leave an honest review. I read every one of them, and I sincerely thank you for it. So for weekly brand strategy and leadership insights I don't share anywhere else, subscribe to the Visionary Advisory newsletter at Bryan Smeltzer, Bryan, SMELTZER.com. Link is in the show notes as well. And again, thank you for your time. I know today's episode is a little longer than usual. Thank you for your time. Always appreciated. And the Visionary Chronicles, where the future is created by those, I say, the bold enough to shape it. So until next time, keep innovating, keep leading, and keep shaping the future. And stay true, stay authentic, be different, be great, enjoy the journey along the way. I'm Bryan Smeltzer. I will see you in the next Visionary Chronicles.